Welcome all to another video from Oscar Cooper. I hope you're all doing well. Bit of a surprise for my regulars. It's another classic list from Coop, and it is the top Souls-like games out there at the moment on the PlayStation 4. We have a wealth of them. It was so busy last year with the amount of really top AAA titles that came out that completely paid homage to the great Dark Souls series. We're going to start off with a game that's not actually in the list, which is normal for me, I suppose. Did a bit of Googling, obviously. Well, I've had this list in my head for about 4 months because we had some pretty newish titles that I needed to put in and work out where they fitted. So it took me a while to work it all out. And I've been looking at a lot of lists from a lot of the big name sites. Scissor Paper Shotgun, I think that's what they call being one of them, had Titan Souls on the list. Now, on the back of a council tax bill, I will pay it as and when. I'd written some of the traits that a Souls-like game should try, and you're not going to get all of these. But first of all, you're going to have a thing called currency, which would be souls in a Souls-like game. They should all have it, and the enemy should give it to you, and it should be something that you use and stack up to spend. Secondly, the story should be quite in-depth but hidden within the characters. Then of course you've got your bonfires, then of course you've got your respawns at your bonfires, and of course you've got your enemies that respawn at the bonfires and enemies that respawn with your souls in them, i.e. the ones that killed you. Stay with me here. Then you've got shortcuts on the map. Does the map wrap around itself? Can you build a shortcut to get to another area? Then there's walls for the bosses that you can't pass back through. Then I've written combat, we'll get to that in a second. Then there's parry mechanic. Then there's characters in the hub that you meet on your journey that then appear back at the hub for you. Then there's reticle targeting, which is singling out a single enemy on a group of people. Then there's the fast and hard combat buttons and combinations of, and single-handed weapon holding, the option to hold a sword with both hands. You ready for this? Titan Souls does none of them, by the way. It's just got souls in the name, so that's why it's not on the list. And the mind blows a bit why on earth a site like the aforementioned would include such a weird game. And that also cancels out a lot of other indie games like Dead Cells, but there is one indie game that's coming up that is completely different to the Souls-like format, but still adheres to the rules. You'll see what I'm talking about, but let's get to what we're looking at now, Coop. Actually, just quickly, Titan Souls adheres more to Shadow of the Colossus, and by the way, Shadow of the Colossus is free this month. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say those words, Shadow of the Colossus, get off my channel. I'm serious. Go. Okay, Salt & Sanctuary. Now, I haven't spoken about Salt & Sanctuary since it appeared on my top 15 couch co-op list of all time, about to hit 900,000 views, not being funny, but this game deserves more conversation because it is such a beautiful indie game, and of course, it's two-player. It is essentially a side-scrolling Dark Souls with salt as the currency, but everything else is there. Most of the stuff on that list is in this game. It looks and sounds beautiful also. With an instantly recognisable art style, it really did make a massive name for itself when it came out on the indie scene. It was around on Steam for ages, it made it over to the PlayStation 4, it is also available on the Vita, which is such a joy actually to have this game portable, because it's so hard, because it's got so much depth, and it offers that structure that a Dark Souls game does in an amazing indie side-scrolling format. And it also offers that single-handed combat option, and if you relax with it, it will hurt you. Having a class option is also very important with a Souls-like, and this does offer the mage, the thief, the warrior and the knight options, all with different starting outfits and weapons. Nothing massive changes on the moveset front, but it's such a tradition, isn't it, to be able to commit to a character type from the get-go, but also a tradition to be able to level up that character type to be whatever you want in endgame, so it doesn't really matter what you choose. That's definitely a Dark Souls trait. The skill tree and the convolution within the hub itself is so complicated and hidden. Like, even getting someone else in to play it on the multiplayer with you locally, it requires a talisman and talking to someone special to even give you the option. It doesn't even have it on the main menu. I love that idea. I love this game, and it should get more recognition. Let's hope it has a renaissance with 2020. Okay, so this is the one slot that I was going to allow a game like Dead Cells or a game like Hollow Knight. And what it is essentially a side-scrolling game that only really adheres to a handful of that lists. Mainly being the stuff with the story, the stuff with the characters being back at the hub, and the respawn elements, and the fact that you have to reach a certain point and then the enemies respawn once you rest at said location. But this game's reputation far precedes it. Sort of stepped out of the shadow of being a Dark Souls homage into its own universe. It's incredible how big a reputation it's carved out for itself on the indie platforming scene, and how seriously people take this game and its lore and its different characters. Check out the amazing map transition scene, which you have to discover on a giant beetle. One of its huge similarities is, of course, the boss fight and the commitment that comes with going to a boss fight or even finding a boss fight within a map itself. And of course, that shortcut element. That's a huge area of this game, is cutting out the amount of time it takes to actually manually get to different areas on the map. Teleporting around is just not a thing in this game. And of course, it punishes you. Being a Metroidvania game and a roguelike, essentially, kind of it shares that plateau with the Dark Souls comparisons. It's got a lot of different playstyles in this game, and it's got a brilliant idea with its rune system and a combat section that allows you to emphasize the specials that you rely on, and the art style and the way the levels are drawn, and the little hidden enemies, these killer plants that are lying around waiting to snap up at me as I'm adventuring around a map that I've never been in before. Those feelings are really definitely what you're looking for with the Souls like, and the exploration / reward setup is so strong with this game. So it's mainly that respawn mechanic, the in-depth story that's woven into the non-player characters, getting all of those characters back to said hub and really enjoying the perks that come with exploration and discovering all the shortcuts, etc. The rest of this game is a hardcore platformer game. It's not a third-person action RPG. So there the similarities stop. But holy hell, damned is it strong. I've got so much love for Hollow Knight. It is awesome. Yeah, can you believe it? It made it in. The game from Respawn, a AAA massive Disney franchise, came out with a Dark Souls blueprint underneath it. It's all there, especially down to the bonfire mechanic and the enemy respawn mechanic. What an incredible idea that Dark Souls is now full on mainstream and getting into Disney games that are being released on a AAA basis. Now, I don't know if its similarities with the Dark Souls series are what only props this game up. I don't think they are. I think there's enough substance in here to make it a standalone IP in itself, but it certainly helps the game having those detailed mechanics involved, especially with the parry mechanics and some of the combat mechanics. So you do have a dodge and roll that is a must in a third-person ARPG that wants to be a Souls-like, is that you have a hard and fast option on your combat, and you have a dodge and roll or even a parry mechanic. And this one totally obeys those rules. One of the things, though, is the wildlife is ridiculously OP. I didn't even mean to die. This should not have happened at all. And again, that's a Souls-like. Dying when you don't plan to. I would say it's a Souls-like light, because it also leans on stuff that would never ever be in a Souls game, like this bullshit, which I really lost my rag with after a while. That brings me back to combat. So Souls games really are about carving through swathes of enemies at high efficient pace and with a high risk and high reward setup. Sliding down this thing and man, I didn't know whether it wanted to double jump out of me, it disrupted me. It happens all the time in this game. There's no place for it in a Souls like. This game had to appeal to the masses, and I imagine they thought they were being a bit Uncharted with all this stuff, but fuck that, George Lucas. It also got really choppy on my footage. Huge swathes of gameplay just weren't available to me when I went into the replay bay, which is a bit weird. And again, it doesn't like HDR. Sorry for not turning it off, but you'll just have to cope. And another thing is, it does really well on enemy placements after the respawn. One of the main things about a Dark Souls like game is that your enemy placement within a level is so damned important, and letting the player being able to peel his way through and pull different enemies towards you is definitely a massive trait. Fallen Order does that really well, putting key enemies in certain areas, allowing that player to have crowd control, have a hierarchy of who they're going to attack first and when. By the way, the music didn't carry over on this footage, which makes it very awkward. You said you weren't going to have this on here. Well, I've got to get a plate, knife and fork and some words and eat them because it's on here, and Bloodborne isn't on here because Bloodborne is a Bloodborne's a Dark Souls game that just happens to be called Bloodborne. What's this game all about? Well, this clip will show you. With more in common with Tenchu than it has really with the Souls series, that's why it's been included, is because it's far enough away from the Souls format to warrant it being a Souls-like, but it's from the people that make the Souls game. So it's a bit arse about tit, bear with me on it, and also bear with me on this footage because the game doesn't adhere to the same controls as any of the Souls games. It's all about that parry mechanic. That had a learning curve on it. Cancelling out 9 years of Dark Souls muscle memory to introduce this parry mechanic is in itself a trolly stroke of genius. It took me so long to get my head around it, and then going back to the game again, I've had to get my head around it again. And coming back from death is also a complete smack in the gob for a developer that thrives on murdering you time after time and not giving you a goddamn crumb to walk away with. But like most, once that penny drops, the game is absolutely fucking amazing, and it has some of the best boss battles in the entire Souls series. So this kind of overshadows some original Souls games for just out and out badassery and amazing story driven boss fights that are epic, theatrical, scored like a goddamn film. It's huge. Like the love and effort that went into this game and for the studio to sidestep its traditional control mechanics was both two strokes of genius and an amazing risk. But God does it pay off. Look at how I can control my character. And that's another thing, is just how quick you are with moving around and focusing and targeting. That targeting mechanic is really here now. Everything else that makes a good Souls-like is here within the game model. The characters in the hub, the reticle targeting, the story hidden within the story even. All of those respawn mechanics are still here. There is a fast travel mechanic within the bonfires themselves as well, so major points scored there. Enemies having your souls after they've killed you. The single-handed option and the combat options are kind of where this game is a little bit different. I wasn't too over the moon with the lack of directions you could go in when it came to the combat and also the cosmetics. I just had to take that on the chin. That's me being really shallow, I think, with the game not giving me stupid little outfits, but you know, it doesn't need it because the base game model is so good. This is such a strong game. I love watching footage of it as well. You can just tell how shit I am at it. Having unlimited stamina and relying on those L and R buttons for that twitch mechanic and getting that perfect parry is such a great refreshing change, really, and it shouldn't hold this game back at all. Those controls are genius, the game's amazing. Coming back after you've died and slaughtering the people that have killed you right in front of everyone never ever ever gets boring, trust me on that one. So that's Sekiro, and there's only 3 more games, guys. Shots fired. Oh, shots fired. Shots quite literally fired, because it is Dark Souls with guns. It's Remnant from the Ashes, in at number 3. As you all know, a game I just won't shut up about. Please, Coop, let it go. I'm not going to let it go. I love this game. So I'm going to do the whole story thing. I sat down with this. It had been, I think, about 8 weeks, and I never noticed. So I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I'm in halfway through this godforsaken dungeon. Never noticed the statues in here before and how beautiful they look. Then I look over and look at him. He stopped. Check this out. Like he'd just been wandering around, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Fuck it, that bloke's here. Now we've got to kill him." Anyway, you just saw then, I took a hit, dodged a hit, the muscle memory literally came back within seconds. Then I walked round this corner. The Horde control lovers will notice that I put away a weapon there without reloading it. That comes to bite me in the arse in a minute, because I'm walking around with bulletless weapons in the middle of an alien invasion. It's so epic for this game to just suddenly decide that it's going to push every goddamn thing it's got at you. It procedurally generates the enemy placement, so that's its stunning angle on a completely intact Dark Souls template. Okay, so then I'm like, woof, that was alright. I'm going to hit my share button, and it's gonna, and then it's like, no, you're not. And I could see him in the corner as the share button's loading in. I'm like, fuck, this one. All Dark Souls games you'd never be able to pause them. Don't matter if you're on offline, got children, got an elderly person who's fallen down the stairs, you can never pause. So next up, I've forgotten what the health button is. I'm taking the cheap health, and I can hear this noise. Listen. It's just slung in a massive mini boss. It just doesn't give a shit, this game. It just says keep. If you can take it, I'll keep giving it. Have it, boy, have it. Absolutely friggin' amazing. And I control the situation by the skin of my damn teeth. But you see the deal. But in true Dark Souls fashion, and we're still on the same piece of reel, I'm like, I'm not having this. And so I go back down there again. I get backed up into a corner. I realise that my gun has actually got a flamethrower mode on it that I've been ignoring, forgot about that. And it sends in something else. This game is so good.
Heads up! Fire incoming!
List-wise, we kind of have it all here, right down to the currency, right down to the cool people in the hub. They open up and develop. It doesn't lean too much on different loot types and different weapon types and armor types. It actually has a very basic tree to begin with that you then expand depending on what direction you want to go in. I like that idea, and I also like the idea of the guns not coming out of your ears. It's cool. I've had the same shotgun and Uzi for most of my playthrough. I'm not worrying too much about, loot and various loot drops, but you do get given currency and you do get given material to upgrade, and I love these crazy characters.
Take care.
But I think the star of the show is the dodge and roll mechanic and the immune windows that you have at your availability. You can step back or slightly duck and also do a roll combined with a number of different entrance moves and exit moves. It's crazy how awesome. This is like the Division 2 in fast forward at 1,000 miles an hour. So if you're good at the Division 2, Lee, everybody, crew, you're gonna slide straight into this like butter, and of course, let them burn. Great example of its trolling mechanics here. I reached my bonfire. I'm at the end of the level. I'm like, thank God for that. Little noise says, no you haven't, because I've just spawned in an enemy over there and it's too close to you for you to be able to do that. So you've got to come and kill me now. Genius. I love it. Process of elimination. Process of elimination. The intelligent among you are thinking, oof. Didn't even think you'd have this in here, and it's number 2. Whoa, what's number 1? You all know what number 1 is. Don't fast, leave it. Okay, I love the search. I tell you what, I was in the fish and chip shop the other day, and I remembered playing Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter. I don't know if you ever played Street Fighter 1, but it was not what Street Fighter 2 was. This is the equivalent jump. I shit you not. Now, I will be repeating myself a little bit because I spoke about the Remnant and, of course, the Surge 2 in previous Game of the Year or Best of lists because they had such a good 2019. This had an incredible 2019 because it improved on its original format so well, and it improved on the mechanics that the previous format boasted that separated it from other Souls Likes. Those mechanics were things like constructing the suit that you're wearing, having some awesome online, offline mechanics when it comes to messaging. One other thing completely forgot, of course, messaging that are left by other players is a massive Souls trait, and we have and haven't seen it in the previous titles on these lists, but it's everywhere in here, and it's really cool because just like every Dark Souls like map, you are on your own, shitting yourself, and you need as much help as you can get, and of course, combat. No stupid puzzles, no ridiculous slots to put a daft key in that you have to gather 3 of to make another key of. No, just hard-ass enemies stacked up to the 9s, placed in key areas of the map. Ambush setups where you do the classic, oh, I've got really far. No, you haven't. You've just walked past a bunch of enemies that have now looped round the back of you and will murder you slowly. The suit really is the separation from a lot of the traditional soul stuff. You have a power meter and all this crazy ratios that you have to juggle around with when you're dealing with combat or when you're dealing with your stats. Weight versus power to the parts themselves, and of course a massively detailed and complex crafting and upgrading system that just keeps giving and giving every enemy. You can steal their weapon off them by cutting off their limbs. It's such an amazing mechanic, and it really does give it loads of separation from a lot of the other games on this list. Having a lot to do is unbelievably apparent here. I am Jocelyn, so I've walked too far forward as per. I'm dealing with a machine gun placement and the maintainer of that machine gun. I'm also fighting one of the toughest enemies in this map area, and I'm also jostling my stamina against my health regen, and I'm also getting corrosed by the acid that I keep fucking jumping into. It's amazing, the panic-inducing management that goes on during the white knuckle combat. And that's why we have combat, because all of these weapons have different move sets. They all have 2 hard and fast movement abilities. This one splits when you do the easy move on it, and then the hard is an overhead. You have invincibility windows that lengthen depending on what you're wearing. So that corresponds to the amount of stamina you've got and what speed that roll or dodge will induce. That's not a brand new idea, and it's a massive Souls thing, but it's really cool to see that trickle into the actual infantry and weight management. Weight management was huge in Dark Souls, and it's huge in this, and also your weapon type and choice of that, and choice of what move you combine with that weapon type is so important. I love the weight distribution on the animations here. It's friggin' amazing, and it's also friggin' amazing. It's the one with the true boss windows. We have the true walk through, can't walk out of boss windows, and the bosses are total Dark Souls tributes, all of them. It is almost a perfect sequel, and it is also almost a perfect Dark Souls tribute. If you are remotely into the Souls genre and have not played this game, it was one of the strongest of 2019. The Surge 2 is a mammoth. Blimey, Coop. Blimey. Well, you didn't forget. I mean, the war with this and Sekiro on my channel, on that Versus video, is still raging. It's still raging to this day. And I think Sekiro does deserve to be on the list. Of course it does. All those horrible things I said about it are only there because of all the amazing things that this game does. Nioh is actually getting sequeled on the 13th of March, perfect timing for this video, and it was also free, and of course it was an exclusive for a while as well. I had to do so much backstepping when this game came out. At the time I was convinced that no one could compete with any From game. This not only competed with all of them, it is stronger than some of them. Nioh is a damned masterpiece. I just didn't think that Team Ninja would nail it like they did. They nailed everything. They nailed the currency. They nailed the story. They nailed the bonfires. They nailed the respawn mechanics with all the enemies in them. The shortcuts are like massive in this game. They're one of the biggest things. All of the bosses have the windows on them. It is so combat heavy. There's not a single fucking puzzle in this game. It doesn't want them. It doesn't need them. It's got a parry mechanic that is so deep. It's got a stamina rebirth mechanic, meaning if you whack the chai button, you get rewarded back with your stamina, and that happens in the heat of combat. So it's such an important button to use. I constantly forget to use it, and if you run out of stamina, you can't parry, you can't even block, and that's reversed onto the enemies. They also have their stamina bar, and they can also be, one-shotted if that runs out. Fucking hell, that's deep. It also nails character progression and characters in the hub and increasing the amount of NPCs to help you. It's also got the classic range combat in here that we saw a bit more of in some of the other Souls games. It's also got that fast, quick combat button combination, and it's also got a different stance for each weapon. So we talk about the single-handed option in the Souls games. This has got 4 different stances, including one where you have it sheathed and you bring it out like a complete weeb badass. It's completely relentlessly difficult in true Soul fashion, and this is the crux. This is why it sweeps above everything else. It integrated a loot mechanic and variants on loot that rivals a game like Diablo 3. It's up there with Monster Hunter with the amount of loot that you can gather and combine and put on your character. That folds onto all of the weapons, and there's 6 different weapon types, including that axe on a chain thing that you saw in Kudo 2 strings. The love for this game is just overwhelming, bro. The call-in mechanic is amazing, and look at this footage. These red things are deaths of other online players around this boss. This boss isn't essential, he's a submission. It's another thing that I love about this game is it offers every mission as a submission with variants on it and with all the bosses. It's got so much replayability. This fight was balls to said wall. I tell you, man, I can't beat him, but I keep going at him. That's when you know you've got a good Souls like, is that it just gives you enough to make you think, I can do this. Again, a simple enemy, a simple little low-level grunt, if you don't approach them correctly or don't give the game mechanics the respect they deserve, that said enemy will take you down to Chinatown. That's a true Souls-like trait, is that any enemy, not rank not included, can kill you straight away if you're not paying attention. Nioh does this so well. Not only does it do it so well, I'm convinced it plays on the mechanic. So you know when you think you've killed something, but it's got a millimeter of health, and it can kill you. It doesn't matter. This happens to me so much in this game, and I love it. You have to be thorough. You have to make sure everything is properly dead. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna say, you dead now. I love you all. Thank you so much for sticking with me with this massive video. Couch co-op top 5 coming up next week. Take care.